Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We would like to give you a warm welcome back to Salam Radio and welcome back to another episode of Tomorrow's Voice. Today I am your host, Abdul-Roqeeb Salman, and I am joined by the wonderful, illustrious Zakariya Mancha. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I know my introduction for you did you no justice, but I tried.
You did too much.
I
don't even understand what
too little,
illustrious
too little.
means. So.
Nor do I.
Yeah.
Well, no. Thank you and welcome back. It has been a while since we've been back. When was I think we weren't here during Ramadan. Did we? I can't remember whether we did a show just before Ramadan or we also left a week before Ramadan.
No, I don't think so. I think we did.
We did a show all the way just before Ramadan, and then for 5 weeks, because we didn't do it straight after Ramadan. So we do apologize. It's been a while, but first and foremost, we hope you had a wonderful Ramadan and Eid Mubarak, even though it's a bit late from us here at Tomorrow's Voice. So, interestingly, the topic of today will be about Ramadan. Now, alhamdulillah, we've had the month of Ramadan, and we did lots of different form of ibadah, worship, salah, saum, sadaqah, charity, all that sort of thing. We did a lot in Ramadan, but I think one of the things we always want to know is what next. Ramadan has come, and Ramadan has gone. Now what? I think that's a question we usually find ourselves asking, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the blessing of Ramadan. And I think, we did a show just before Ramadan came. We did a show about, Ramadan, the blessings of Ramadan. So perhaps have a look at that. We discussed the blessings of Ramadan. And one of the beauties of Ramadan is everybody has that same mindset. We all have that shared similar goal to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to do as much good in this month. But now after Ramadan, it's not necessarily that the goal has disappeared, because that's always the ultimate goal. Everybody wants to attain Allah's pleasure and go to Jannah. But now the togetherness, if you know what I mean, it's not as strong anymore. We are a Muslim ummah, but now you don't see as many brothers in the mosque. Now you don't see them often. Now, there isn't that feeling of spirituality and connectedness.
And
it's not as
patience,
strong anymore during outside of Ramadan.
Yeah, I think definitely. And especially when it comes to maybe, let's say someone's testing your patience, for example, and then you're thinking, oh, I'm fasting, I'm just going to relax here, yeah? But now there's no I'm fasting thought popping into your head. So when
straight away you just...
That's it, Ramadan's over, that's it, you're getting it now, yeah? That's
it. Ramadan's over. But no, you're quite right. And I think one of the things that we have to understand is the blessing that Allah has put in the month itself. Our teacher was discussing this yesterday. The month of Ramadan, it comes with its own blessing. It's a bit easier. It's a bit easier. Some of the things that happens, for example, we feel more at peace. We feel, more willing to do good. We are more mentally focused to stay away from evil. It is mentioned, during Ramadan, the gates of Jannah are flung open and the gates of Jahannam are closed. It is mentioned that the shayateen are also shackled up. So Ramadan is a breeding ground for us to be able to actually, for us to be able to do more and more good. But now that the shayateen are unlocked, and now the gates of Jahannam are also flung open, now there's a change in us. I think there's a change in us. Now we think Ramadan's gone. There's nothing almost holding us together anymore. Let's just go back to how we were.
And business as usual.
Literally, it is that business as usual. And if we actually ponder it, it's actually very sad. We go through, before Ramadan, this is how we were like. We go through Ramadan and we come out and we're not changed. We're not changed. We're still, as you mentioned, business as usual. We had a training course. In that training course, we were high flyers. We were getting top marks. But the moment it's finished, straight back to what we know, what we're comfortable with, and we're just straight back to either this certain sin or this sort of stuff. it's a problem. It's a problem that I think we really need to consider. We need to ponder. We need to address. Ramadan isn't just. It shouldn't just be a month. Ramadan. We should be living our entire lives in the state of Ramadan, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And of course, this just brings me back to, how the Sahaba would treat the Ramadan, because there's a great example there for us. And 6 months after Ramadan, they would be, praying that their Ramadan was accepted, and then 6 months before, they'd be praying that they make it to the next one. And so that kind of just shows you how their life revolves around it. In our case, maybe it's like, some people, Allah, maybe they dread it and they're like, oh, I have to fast, and like, oh, I'm gonna wake up
for suhoor,
and all this, and how am I gonna go to work, and how am I gonna go to school, and how am I gonna participate in PE, or how am I going to especially people who have tough jobs, maybe it's even harder, like they might not feel as excited for it, but that's how you should feel. And I think one lesson that I learned maybe this Ramadan, and something that might benefit people, is that I realized that I was using my holidays for a lot of things, booking them whatever throughout the year, but then when it came to Ramadan, like I didn't book any because I had booked so many before. And really, we should be saving some for Ramadan, especially like last 10 nights, for example. When you use your work holidays, usually people will get 25, maybe 30 days. That's like a good 5-6 weeks a year. We might waste them on other things. Even if we're not going on holiday, we might just book holidays, right? So I think really prioritizing it like that, thinking about it like that, inshallah, helps us to make the most of it.
And I think it's quite nice that you mentioned it now. So that's something we can all keep in mind, because now you have a year until Ramadan, perhaps start thinking about how you're going to change your holiday, how you can, maximize it so that you can get more benefits from Ramadan. So thank you for sharing with that. And of course, I think it's important as a caveat to mention that, the way we're speaking, this advice is for us as much as it's for you guys. First and foremost is for us, because every single individual after Ramadan, we have to ponder, we have to reflect. Ramadan's gone. What do I now do until the next Ramadan? And as you mentioned, the Sahaba, they were constantly asking that Allah accept our Ramadan, because there is no guarantee that our Ramadan will be accepted. There is no guarantee. The only guarantee is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we won't know. You don't necessarily get, you wake up or you have a dream, by the way, your Ramadan was accepted. There are perhaps some signs to show that your Ramadan has been accepted, but we won't ever fully know. So what we have to do is engage in a lot of dua, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our Ramadan. Because, all the goodness, all the strength, all the hard work that we pour through during Ramadan, imagine if it goes to waste. And our teacher was mentioning that Allah himself is pure, and he only accepts that which is pure. Imagine you strived, you've done lots of hard work, you put in the effort, you put in the time, and then your deed is going to Allah and it is rejected and it's flung back to your face. So one of the things that we can do, many people ask, I've finished Ramadan, now what? Engage in dua. Engage in dua. Constantly be asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, please accept my Ramadan. Because no one can accept it except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other people might say, oh, by the way, Zakariya, I saw, you seemed really on point during this Ramadan. It doesn't matter what other people have seen. It doesn't matter if people think, oh, you did really good during this Ramadan or what. Ultimately, it matters what Allah thinks. Has he accepted our Ramadan or has he not? That's why we need to engage in dua.
Yeah, and I think there's a key point there that everyone should always remember. Their worship is not perfect. Sometimes it might be easy, especially if you do a lot of prayer and you do a lot of ibadah and you read a lot of Quran, and then you feel like maybe, okay, alhamdulillah, I've done enough. But you have to remember that it's not perfect, and you have to make dua for its acceptance, because maybe there was sometimes you were lacking in sincerity, maybe sometimes you were lacking in quality, maybe sometimes you were doing it, you weren't focused, for example. So and bring yourself back to the examples that were set from the the pious predecessors, the Sahaba, and how they would treat Ramadan, and how you hear stories about how long they would stand in prayer at night until their feet would be swelling, and things like that. And just some of these people, the people who are guaranteed Jannah already, and then look at them, right?
Subhanallah.
And
Subhanallah.
then there's us, where
we
there's
don't
no
know what we're gonna
guarantee
get,
at
and yet
all,
we're just taking it lightly.
If anything, these days the odds are obviously stacked against you. More people will obviously enter the Jahannam than Jannah. So you have to be aware of that constantly, and you have to be constantly pushing yourself.
That's true. I mean, you are quite right. We who are not guaranteed anything because we're not sure, and yet we're slacking, and that is quite a visible difference. They were guaranteed Jannah. These Sahaba, that helped the Prophet. They were guaranteed Jannah, and yet they didn't slack. In fact, they actually increased in their worship. So what does that tell us? We've got to increase. How often we do ibadah. It's just one thing as well. It doesn't have to be many things. Focus on one thing. Let's say you've started, getting in depth in, tafsir of the Quran during Ramadan, for example. Try to focus on that. Before we came on the show, I was having to think and I was having to look. What are the advice? What are the suggestions of actions we can do after Ramadan? It doesn't necessarily matter what the action is. What matters is moderation. What matters in moderation? Because, you've just finished Ramadan, you're like, oh, I was so good during Ramadan. Watch until the next Ramadan. I'm going to be completely changed. I'm going to be so good. 3 weeks later, the brother has gone back to his old ways. What matters is not, I'm going to do everything. What matters is I'm going to do one thing and I'm going to stick with it. It is a hadith that, it is mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes, acts done in moderation. It's easy for you to go, I'm going to do all this, I'm going to do all this. You tire yourself out and you leave all of it. However, if you do one little thing and you can maintain it, is that not better for you?
Yeah, I think the hadith was about consistency, right? So it's the most beloved deeds are the consistent ones or something like that. Maybe you're referring to another one, I'm not sure. But there's definitely wisdom in that. You see, and you see this in other fields, in other sciences, in other disciplines where, people will be consistent. And I think there's like there's some sort of rule where like if you improve 1% every day and then that compounds up, right? And you get to like 1,000% or something at the end of the year. So, small, consistent, moves that you should be making. And whatever it is, whatever your heart is kind of inclined towards, because, different people like different aspects of the religion. They want to study different parts of it. And, we need experts in all the fields, definitely. We don't have enough. We do have some, obviously we have within our masajid, we have scholars and we have very, very learned people, but they're very few in number, unfortunately, and so they're very drained. We all congregate around them, and you notice as soon as they finish the salah, everyone's like flagging them down. I got this question or I've got that question, but at the end of the day, especially people who are going on to become parents. When you get to that stage, then you're going to be a leader for your family. You have to think about that. You have to think about that responsibility. You can't always be running to the sheikh, for your whole life.
My child asked me this question, so so you're quite right. We have to be consistent in. I think consistency and moderation was what I was trying to highlight. But you have to be consistent in those deeds. And as you mentioned, there might be a certain type of ibadah that you're more inclined to, or that you appreciate. For example, maybe for you it's some extra salah. Maybe for you it's reading more Quran. Maybe for you it's fasting. So for example, it was the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to fast Mondays and Thursdays. Let's say you don't usually do that. Let's say, I really quite enjoyed fasting. This year my fasting felt, really good. I would like to specifically focus on fasting. This is an example. And then you might fast Monday, Thursday. You might fast the white days, in the middle of the month. You might fast, the first 3 days, the middle, the last 3 days. So, you might find opportunities to fast. So this is just one form of ibadah, and you're trying to maintain it. You're trying to be consistent in it. For example, it might be salah. And this is one I personally have told myself that I want to focus on. Interestingly, I've had the opportunity, I've noticed. However, my better nature has not been inclined to it yet. And I'm being honest here because I think it's important to have, to be transparent, because as we mentioned, this advice is for us as much as it is for anyone else who's listening. And it's for us first. So when I finished Ramadan, what my teacher specifically suggested, it was in a dars. He said that, the beauty of Qiyam al-Layl, the opportunity and, the blessings of Qiyam al-Layl, night prayer, standing at night praying is immense. So I thought, after Ramadan, that's one of the things I wanted to particularly focus on. Usually what I do is I leave my witr quite late. So that will give me opportunity to, do some extra sunnah, extra, nawafil that I could be praying. So my mindset was, leave your witr late and pray some extra sunnah or not. It's been almost a week now. I have not done any of
Confessions.
that. And I'm being truthful. I have not done any of that. However, alhamdulillah, what I am grateful for from Allah is that it's constantly on my mind.
Yeah.
It's constantly, because you can't just leave. Ramadan has gone, yes, but you can't just leave it at that. It's constantly on my mind. So much so that it bugs me.
Yeah.
So I need to now act upon it. It's also a sign of laziness on my part. It's like, yeah, it's on my mind, but I'm not acting upon it. So I'm being truthful here. So it can be one aspect. You might not have started yet. People might say, oh, I didn't start straight after Ramadan. I'm already a bad person. No. As long as before the next Ramadan, you have tried to start these actions and you start to see a change within yourself. So for me personally, it's doing extra, sunnah on nawafil after Aisha, standing in Qiyam al-Layl or tahajjud prayer. That's my, what's the word I'm looking for? That's one of the things I want to focus on and one of the changes I want to see within myself before the next Ramadan. And, an example we can take from this is, set yourself a little goal, As I said, whatever you're more inclined to, fasting, read 3 ayah every day, or, look at 1 tafsir every day, learn 5 hadith every day, or 1 hadith every day. And, alhamdulillah, the religion is such that we have a range of ibadah to choose from. I don't know, donate £10 per week or something like that. So we have so many options. Pick one, stick with it, and be consistent in it.
Yeah, and watch how it changes your life, because one small thing like that, it can be, the thing that opens the door for you, inshallah. So, you pick up one thing, and then this is, definitely worth doing. Pick up one thing, be consistent with it. Maybe if you're doing it consistently for 6 months, then maybe start looking at another thing. Maybe pick up a class in something, start learning Arabic, or start, reading tafsir, or whatever you're inclined towards. And you'll see how it transforms your life, and slowly, especially learning Arabic and stuff, you can see the benefits, and you can feel it. And now when you read the Quran and you might understand bits, and,
a little more,
it makes you feel very good about yourself. And I think I liked your point. I liked the little confession about how you you had a target,
confession there,
which you've been failing to hit. And I think I had a similar issue.
Oh, confession time for you.
Confession.
Right, let's jot it down then.
Mine was really in Ramadan. I realized that whenever I had any spare minute, I would try and read Quran, or I'd try and do something, because I'd have in the back of my mind that these minutes and these seconds are not ordinary. There's extra weight on them. And so if I spend it in disobedience, there's extra weight, there's extra sin. And if I spend it in obedience, then there's, extra reward.
Barakah, extra reward.
So I think really now, coming out of it, maybe I don't value my time as much as I was in Ramadan. Obviously, the extra reward is not there, but still there's reward, right? And your time is still very valuable. So you have to remember that, like to say, time is money, right? And don't underestimate the value of your time that you have. If you're not going to spend it, chasing dunya, which obviously there's nothing wrong with doing, in moderation. If you're not going to spend your time doing that, then you should be chasing the akhirah, right? Like some people, they don't do either one. They're going to be sat there, they're neutral. They're not earning anything in this world, right?
Or in the hereafter.
Or in the next one.
But no, you're quite right, and thank you for that little confession there.
No worries.
But I think it is important that because we're definitely not perfect. We're just students of knowledge, trying to learn a little something, and whatever nuggets of wisdom we get, whatever crumbs of wisdom we get, we think to share. And that's why I said the caveat, and I'll have to keep on saying it. First and foremost, this advice is for us as much as it's for you guys. We said it's tomorrow's voice because alhamdulillah, we've got opportunity of working with the youth, seeing the youth. Some might even argue we are the youth. So, we are.
Some might, yeah.
Yeah, some might, some of us are the youth because of how old we are, but some of us are. Anyways, not mentioning anyone here in this studio. But no, so this is for first and foremost for us as much as it is for you guys.
Yeah, I think that's an important disclaimer, because we might sit here and people might hear it and think,
they're like,
these guys, they're telling us off all the time, right? We are probably worse than you in some ways.
No, it's not actually. No,
it's not. Probably true.
Probably it is true.
Definitely.
It will be true.
We're just normal, and what we try and do really is we'll just go to our dars and we might listen to something our teacher says, and then we come and relay it to you. We're just forwarding that message.
We're just regurgitating. Really. So don't think if we're saying something, these guys are on something. They must have been 3 hours of study to be able to. They must have been looking at all the hadith, looking at the Quran. These are scholars in the making. Well, no, we just listen to our dars. We think, this is quite a important topic for the youth especially, and let's just pass that on. So I'm glad we put that disclaimer there. But going back to the topic of what next after Ramadan, it's something that we mentioned just a while back. It is that whatever you do, whatever act you want to do, you must make sure that you don't revert to how you were before Ramadan. Because surely that is a loss. That is a loss. Yeah. Even if you increase by, as you mentioned, 1%, a day or a month, that is a sign of, you've learned something. It's not like school, how we cram for an exam, we do the exam, 3 months after, what did you learn? You've forgotten. No, Ramadan is indeed a special time, and you must see change within yourself. If you don't, then that's a problem. That's a sign of that could be a sign of a hard heart. This blessing, that opens hearts, that that has barakah beyond understanding and comprehension. So much so that, just one night, if you were to find this one night, is better than 1,000 months. We don't know how much better than 1,000 months. It's ambiguous. This is the blessing that we get through Ramadan, and you come out of it and you see no change in yourself. That is a problem. That is a problem that we desperately need to say, why did I not see a change in myself? What is it that I lacked during Ramadan? What is it that I didn't focus on? And we need to work on it straight away. We need to work on it straight away.
Yeah, I think that point about how you have to have some change, some small change at least, and it's as mentioned, it's a sign of your Ramadan being accepted in the first place, that you are different coming out of it. And I like your analogy about the exam. I think that's a good one. And you're not out of the exam, you're still in the exam. Your whole life is the exam, right? And you can maybe think of Ramadan as like, when you're sat in your exam and you're just, going along very slowly, maybe at a slow pace, you're losing focus and you're getting tired. And then
all of a sudden you have a question that when
the sort of the people that watch you in your exam and they're like 10 minutes left,
vigilator.
students, those guys. When he's like 10 minutes left, that's your Ramadan right there. That's like telling you, that's it, wake up. You've been messing around too long. You've been wasting too much time, too much energy, right? You're not going to be on this earth forever. And this is your chance, it's like a wake-up call for you. And, you have to come out of it better. And, especially, you never know if you're not going to make it or going to make it to the next Ramadan. I think
so true.
When I studied in university, I was doing a course where we were really working on, there was a module, it was called life modeling. And what they'll do is they'll track like 1,000 people and they'll follow them for like maybe 50, 60, 70 years. And every year they'll check how many of those 1,000 people are still alive. And so, they'll start, maybe everyone's 16 years old or 1 year old or at birth, they'll start, and then they'll keep going. So, and you'd see the numbers just drop down, right? So you've got to remember that.
Well, we are so sorry to cut Zakariya off, but we have an ad break coming up soon. Please join us after that. Apparently we've been told that we can continue. So you said for the life modeling, as life, as they track them over the years, it keeps going
Yeah,
down.
and then every year, there's like an assigned percentage. So even like maybe a 20-year-old might think, oh, I'm safe.
But-
The percentage is of course small, right? It's probably like 0.01% or something. But then you see as you get older and older, it gets higher and higher. And of course, there's no guarantee, right? Like, there's no guarantee you're not going to be that one person out of the thousand in that group that's going to pass away, even though you might be very young.
It doesn't matter. I think, especially if we're relating this to the youth, us youth, we might mess around. We were like, oh, I've still got 10, 13, 50 more years of Ramadan. I'll be better then. I'll be better then. Why be better then? Why be better, in the future? That is not guaranteed when we can be better right now. And I think that's a very good point that you mentioned. There is no guarantee that we're gonna make it to the next Ramadan. One of the regrets that we might say is, okay, I did this, but I wanted to do more. Inshallah, next Ramadan, I'm gonna be better on this. What's the guarantee that you're going to be there for the next Ramadan? So, unfortunately, Ramadan has passed now. That means we'll have to see if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us the ability and the tawfiq to be able to reach the next Ramadan. But if not, let's at least say before the next Ramadan, let me be in a state of Ramadan anyways. Because I think Ramadan shouldn't just be conceptualized and understood as a month, but it should be understood as a state. It should be a state in which the mu'min should be constantly, which we've mentioned is how the Sahaba, that's how they were. Ramadan wasn't just a month. Ramadan was the whole year. Ramadan was their whole life. That was Ramadan for them. So Ramadan isn't a month, but Ramadan should be a lifetime. It should be a lifetime goal. That should be the state that we should be in.
And I think it's mentioned in the Quran, what is one of the aims of Ramadan is so you develop taqwa, and the link there isn't always obvious. So you have to have a think about that and think why is it that me fasting during the month of Ramadan? Firstly, as you mentioned before, Allah accepts the fast, and they don't go to the angels on your shoulders. They don't write them down, right? Your fast then is for Allah. It goes directly to Allah, and if it's pure and sincere, then inshallah it will be accepted. So you have to remember that. So that's why Allah has now told us, what is the purpose of it, and the purpose is so you have taqwa, so you are God-fearing and you are aware of Allah, because when you're fasting, you're not always around people. And there are obviously opportunities for you. Maybe some kids sometimes, they get very tempted to break their fast, for example. So there's that, fear now. There's that awareness that I'm not doing this for people, but I'm doing this for Allah.
I think that's a fair point. And one of the things I've always, I was looking at, one of the things that is important that we understand is this taqwa should not just be in the month of Ramadan. Some people, the way they do Ramadan, it's almost as if they worship the month of Ramadan. And what I mean by that is that, maybe they were not the best Muslim, before Ramadan. The moment Ramadan comes, they are 24/7 in the mosque. They're doing this. They basically become a mufti in Ramadan. And as I've mentioned, outside of Ramadan, that's it. So we have to be careful, here, because we're not worshipping the month of Ramadan. We're worshipping the Lord of Ramadan. Because we go, okay, I worship, in a lot in Ramadan. Ramadan goes. The Lord of Ramadan is still the same Lord. It's not as if, Allah changed after Ramadan. Allah is still Allah. Allah has shown more mercy during Ramadan, but His mercy continues after Ramadan. But I feel like some people, they just say, okay, Ramadan, that's it. After Ramadan, done. Back to normal. So I think it's important to understand that we're not worshipping the month of Ramadan, but we're worshipping, the Lord of Ramadan, and that should be consistent throughout the year, and not just in that shouldn't just be what's what I'm looking for. It shouldn't just be concentrated in one month. Of course, as we mentioned, Allah has given means to facilitate worship during Ramadan, but that doesn't mean we stop there.
I think that's a good point, and you'd see how quickly it fades, especially you'd see on Eid maybe. Because Eid, everyone's very happy and which is good. It should be a day of celebration. All of a sudden, maybe people are doing things they shouldn't be doing. You hear stories. People celebrate Eid in a completely wrong way. Especially some of the youth. They might go out and do things that they weren't doing during
in
Ramadan,
yeah.
which they gave up, and then they're like, now time to celebrate, right? Back to
this is celebration
before, which is obviously not very good, but alhamdulillah, if you're blessed with a good community and you remember and you remember you got to pray, definitely praying on time. Sometimes on Eid it's a struggle, right? Because you're so busy, you're seeing so many people,
doing this, doing that.
You're constantly going to other houses and things like that, and then being aware of your salah and what time it starts and what time it finishes, and then going home or praying around other people's houses, or even going to the masjid, because one of the things is that it's great when you go to the masjid during Ramadan and you walk in and you see on the whole wall is full of alhamdulillah, brothers just sat there reading the Quran, and sometimes people are facing the wall reading the Quran because they don't want to be disturbed, and it's always full. I bet probably definitely in our masjid 24/7, no doubt there's at least one person there, right? Malik, of course.
Mashallah. When he comes next time, we're gonna have to give him a big shout out. Actually, no, give him a big shout out now. Maybe he's listening.
Maybe let's leave that. Actually, because we don't want to, brag for him. Inshallah.
What, Malik? I don't even remember what you did during Ramadan.
Who knows what he did? Allah
knows. But no, you're quite right. There was always at least someone during Ramadan that was there, because that's the beauty of Ramadan. You come in and you see, as you mentioned, some people turning away, they don't want to be disturbed, and you hear it. The mosque comes alive during Ramadan. The mosque is usually alive anyways, but you really feel that sensation, that atmosphere. The Malaika has descended down. There's so much happening at the mosque.
Peace.
There is genuine peace and tranquility during these months, especially in the last 10 days. You just feel it. The Taraweeh, brothers are staying back. Even if they're just chatting or catching up, or some brothers, praying, some brothers, reading Quran. That is the beauty of Ramadan. And I have to be honest, I genuinely miss Ramadan. I miss that atmosphere. And that's just how the world works. We can't always constantly be in Ramadan. However, just because we can't doesn't mean we can't try. We can try to bring back this atmosphere of Ramadan. Try to either do that within a group. Try to meet up with them. How's your iman? What's going on? Let's gather for a dars, for this session, for this, for that. So try to keep up those acts that occur during Ramadan. We can't, because Ramadan is that special month, but that doesn't mean we can't give it our best shot. So I think it's really important that we mention that.
Yeah, definitely. I think another key advice is probably that something that benefited me a lot was, generally I feel like maybe sometimes I lack discipline, and maybe that's the case with a lot of people, especially the youth these days. When there's so much around, and there's so much temptation, and there's so much phones and distractions or whatever, and you never get a chance to really build that discipline that you're supposed to have, right? So one thing that really helped is, you have a goal, you set your goal, yes, then go and find someone, a brother, right, a friend, to hold you accountable for that. Because you realize when there's someone there, pressuring you sometimes you might think they're being harsh, but they have to, right? And then when you have that pressure on you, when you're thinking, maybe
if I don't do this,
Ustad's gonna beat me up or whatever, but then you push yourself a lot more. So I definitely, that's a key advice, something that benefited me a lot, definitely.
And I think it's important to contextualize that advice that you mentioned. It's not as if Allah is always watching you, and of course, we fear Allah as we should. But sometimes it's just a nicer and it's easier to understand that by also getting someone else to someone who's physical that you can go to. Of course. First and foremost, we fear Allah, but through Allah's fear, we decided to really hold ourselves accountable by going to someone else. So perhaps me and you, we're on the show, and we've had our little confession session earlier. Perhaps we should hold ourselves accountable. This is just an example. Find someone, a good friend of yours, someone you perhaps regularly talk to, because I think it's actually better if you find someone you regularly talk to, because you're talking in the day-to-day. Oh, by the way, brother, you told me to remind you, how's The
Yeah.
extra fasting that you said you were going to do after Ramadan. How's that going? Oh, you said you were going to be doing more salah. Are you doing it? Oh, you said you're going to be more disciplined. You're going to spend your time doing this. So it's actually a really good advice that you've mentioned. Find someone, let them hold you accountable, and say, he's going to ask me the next day if I don't do this. And it's not necessarily, but Allah's going to hold you to account. But it's just an easier way for you to facilitate doing that action. And I think it's important to try and do that. That's a really good advice, actually.
Definitely.
Especially for the youth, as you've mentioned. Because nowadays, especially friends, you might say, hold your parents to advice, but when in your youth, usually you start to prioritize your friends more. So hold those friends, good, pious friends that's, good company that you're with, and just go, call me every day or so, or send me a message every day at this time and ask me X, Y, and Z. So I think that's a great way to, to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, definitely. And having that person there, and especially for the youth, again, having, the right role models, the right friends, the right, the people that you look up to, the people that you respect. Of course, it should be your parents, it should be your teachers, it should be, your friends who are maybe doing a lot of stuff, going to the masjid and, active, and maybe they're doing hifz or whatever it is. Those are the people you should be looking up to. You realize as you grow into your teenage years, you start kind of looking up to the wrong kind of people. You start looking at footballers or maybe celebrities or, random people, role models that you start taking, and without you even realizing, you start to follow their life, and they start to influence you. So you can't ever underestimate the importance of having good friends, because especially, let's say you had the wrong friends and you had the wrong role models. Coming out of Ramadan, you might have the intention, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that,
but
they might drag you down.
I think that's very important to mention. I don't know about you, but I think perhaps we should take a few minutes of break, get some water. If you can arrange that, Ali. Is that a possibility? Just want to grab some water. Okay. So what we've been discussing so far is the importance of carrying out other actions after Ramadan, because Ramadan, as we've mentioned, is a beautiful month with lots of blessings, but it's not just enough to be satisfied with Ramadan. Our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yes, he was, his wives, the companions would mention how much more he did during Ramadan, but they would also mention how much more he did outside of Ramadan. So Ramadan, as we've mentioned, isn't the be-all and end-all. It's just the boost in our iman. It's the rocket booster. It will eventually fall off, and then we're left without the boost anymore. Now it's up to every single one of us to maintain that boost, to also create little bursts of speed in our iman, or little boost in our iman. We're not going to do it as much as we did during Ramadan, definitely, but that doesn't, as I mentioned, that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. So we should try to find any good act, and we should try to be consistent with it.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. I think that's a good point. I like how you said about the boost. I think that brings us on to the final segment of our show, where we were going to speak about how what you should do when your iman is dipping, because inevitably, it doesn't matter how learned you are, it doesn't matter how strong you may feel your iman is, there are always going to be times when your iman dips. And like you said, when you get that boost, then what you should try and do is at least hold on to something. It's like it makes me think of, like, let's say you're climbing a mountain, and what some people would do is, if they don't have a peg at the top, right, to hold them up, then what they'll do is they'll have a rope attached to themselves, and they'll be taking these hooks with them. As they go along, they'll clip it in, right, and then they'll tie the rope, and then they'll carry on climbing. So if they fall, if the iman now falls, let's say, and they're falling, now that hook is going to hold them up. So get a foothold, essentially. Build a new habit. Whether it's this is something that was mentioned by one of our teachers just, I think, yesterday or the day before. He said that if someone might ask, what's wrong with just praying the Fard Salah and not praying any Sunnah, not praying any Nafil? And the point he made was, let's say you have one person who is just praying the fard, you have another person who is praying the fard and the sunnah, and he never misses the sunnah, right? Now, when your man is dipping, shaitan is attacking you and you're vulnerable. He's going to first attack your sunnah if you have it. But if you don't have it, he's going to attack your fard. And you're on a slippery slope then, aren't you? You
That's
have
a
no
very
shield.
good way of understanding it. You're quite right. You know, shaitan will attack. If you have extra layers of defense, shaitan will have to go through those layers of defense first. Let's say you're defenseless. You are in a very critical position because there's nothing to defend yourself. So I think that's a really good way of just another. I'll have to just
jot that down, alhamdulillah.
once again, as we mentioned, you know, we're just regurgitating some of the points that we've heard and we think is especially important to the youth. So you know, now more than ever should be. When we should be connected to those, you know, those who are better than us, those who can keep us, you know, in the spirit of Ramadan. And one of the things that, you know, we can do to boost our iman again. So, you know, we're starting to go from not just Ramadan, but you know, whenever we have slumps and whenever we see a dip in our iman, one of the things I think is important that our teachers have mentioned is connect yourself to the masjid. Connect yourself to the masjid. Whether you are just going solely just to pray, or if it's for a dars, you just going to the mosque is an iman boost. I think you just going to the mosque is an iman boost because the mosque, you know, we've talked about how there are blessings in the month of Ramadan, but there are also blessings in the in the masjid. So you're outside the masjid. You go to the masjid, you get that iman booster because you probably see other people, you know, you see people engaging in ibadah, and that probably triggers something, you know, in your mind. You know, you see people engaging in ibadah, you're like, oh, I want to do that. Or there's this dance, and you learn something from it. You're like, oh, this is good. Let me see if I can implement that in my life as well. So one of the things, you know, if we ask ourselves, how can I improve my iman, you know, especially after Ramadan, visit and frequently visit the masjid. And I think it's important, especially as youth, you know, we sometimes go into the mosque, even if it's just to mess around, but you know, we sometimes go into the mosque, we're like, so you just pray salam alaikum, and you're trying to run out of the mosque as soon as possible. Try to frequent the mosque, but try to stay a little longer, you know, if it's 5 minutes more, if it's 10 minutes more, because that's, you know, 5 minutes more in a place of protection, in a place of peace and tranquility before you have to return back to, you know, the fitna, the temptation. Because after you step out of the mosque, the dunya comes back. The dunya rushes back to you.
Straight away.
You know, for example, one of the things I always complain about in our mosque is the Wi-Fi and the connection being terrible, the service being terrible. I actually think, if you really think about it, it's a blessing, you know, less amount of notification coming through. And I always notice it. I step outside the mosque, you know, a meter away. All of a sudden, the notifications, because that's the dunya. That's the dunya rushing back to get you. Because, you know, you escape the dunya, you escape the tricks of shaitan for a little while by going into the mosque, you know, you're more protected. But the moment you then come back, shaitan's like, I've been waiting for you. Where have you been? Now look at this, and you're gone. Just like that. So it's really important, especially as youth, let's frequent the mosque, but not just frequent it. Let's try to stay, you know, let's try to stay a little longer, you know, even if it's just chatting with your friends, messing around, you know, try to stay at the mosque as much as possible. I think that's a good way of boosting our iman.
Definitely, yeah. I think one thing that, you know, in terms of what you can do in the masjid, alhamdulillah, you know, our masjid is very active. So if you're looking for things to do, you're going to find things to do there. And I'm sure that in a lot of other masajids as well, you know, sometimes after salah, the imam will give a little reminder, you know, a short reminder or something like that. And even if there's nothing on, even if you're going to a masjid where, you know, people just go there and they pray salah and there's no events, there's no speaks, there's no reminders, I'd recommend this. Just go there, sit down, lean against the wall. I remember when I was younger, we used to go, and you know, I used to go with my dad or something, sit there, and I wouldn't be, you know, allowed to go on my phone, like to play games or whatever. So I'd have to sit there. I just have to think, you know, this is something that we don't really do these days. You know, you don't ever just sit down without pulling out your phone or without pulling out something to read,
to distract you,
or to watch. and it's a
Sit
real
with
problem.
yourself.
Yeah.
Sit with
Reflect.
yourself.
Reflect on your life and reflect on the things that you're doing, and take that opportunity, and you'll realize how peaceful you feel. I've heard this from people that I've brought to the masjid who, a non-Muslim, one of my friends who I took to the masjid, and he'll sit there, and sometimes we would sit there maybe 3-4 hours and just talk. And even if I wasn't, if we weren't talking strictly about Islam, just general things, he would say to me afterwards, when he sits there, he feels this sense of peace that he doesn't ever feel anywhere else.
SubhanAllah.
And we don't appreciate how good this is.
And I think when you were mentioning reflection, actually I automatically thought of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he would frequently take himself away from his community, in Cave Hira or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, you don't see anyone go into random
There's no
caves
caves,
or, okay, guys, I'm leaving everything. I need to sit with myself, try to find Allah. I'm now trekking to some mountain or a cave. You don't see that. But, the mosque can be this cave of yours. A room in your house can be this cave as your room could be this cave, of solitude for you to reflect. And that's one of the things we also see during Ramadan, i'tikaf, that period of time in which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would reside in the mosque. It just goes back to this iman booster, which is the mosque. He could have said, let's reside somewhere else, but it's the mosque. And it's the mosque, and it's the mosque that's continuing to be emphasized. Let's reside in the mosque. Let's, so much so, sleep there, eat there, do all your, do all your activities in the mosque, because the mosque is like the month of Ramadan. It has its own blessings. It has its own merits. So it would be quite silly if we don't frequent it to be able to attain the merits and the benefits of that. So when you were talking about this advice of sit with yourself, I don't think it's really important. And sorry for a tangent, but psychology got to mention it.
Every show
got to mention it. I mean, many people, I'm sure you might have heard of mindfulness or this and that. It's basically a mini mindfulness session, but before mindfulness, before it even had a name, Islam said you should practice mindfulness. It wasn't called mindfulness, but this spirituality, contemplate, consider, ponder. Literally in the Quran, subhanallah, the amount of time, do they not think? Do they not ponder?
Do they not reflect? Understand?
So multiple times we are told to consider. We are an ummah that thinks. We don't just follow blindly. We think. So sometimes dedicate. Maybe that's something you want to do after Ramadan. Maybe this is just an idea, suggestion. Dedicate, 5 minutes a day at an allocated time. Stop whatever you're doing. Silence your phone, put it on vibrate, do not disturb. Sit down with yourself.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
we say sit down with yourself, but you're not with yourself. You're with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, sit down with yourself, but also, maybe make dua during that time, or maybe, express your worries and your doubts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you're not by yourself. Allah is with you. Allah is with you. So dedicate that time throughout the day, just 5 minutes here, and just with yourself and your Lord. That's it. No one else. Nothing else disturbing you. So perhaps that's something else we can consider doing during the month, after the month of Ramadan.
Yeah, definitely. That's something everyone can do. There's no barriers, You can go and you can do that in the masjid, or you can sit in your home. You can sit on your bed. You can sit on the sofa. Just close your eyes for a minute. Just ponder, reflect. Think about your life. Where's it going? And then inshallah, it'll help you. And I think it's something that's becoming a lot more prevalent. Not even just among religious people, but also among atheists and in society generally here in the UK, especially our work and stuff. They really they have these webinars, and they have these days where they have mental health awareness week and things like that. And then they'll give us, like, I remember my old workplace, they gave us these relaxing bath salts or whatever, and candles and stuff too, and a stress ball, and because people have these issues, people are stressed out, and people are worried, and people are concerned, and they've got anxiety, and they're introverted or whatever it is, and there's so many problems these days. Mental health, is like an epidemic, and so people don't realize, and they're desperately clawing at things and trying to find these solutions, and they've got apps now for meditation and all of these things, and I think our workplace, they can help us. They give us these apps as well. They say, we'll pay for it. Just because they want their workers to be more mindful and more aware. Because obviously, stress, it can destroy you. It can really bring you down.
And I think, the word destroy there, you are quite right. It can make or break someone. So it is important that we practice this mindfulness. Sorry, it's just when you said destroy, that hits because you're quite right. But one of the things that we have to understand is that, yes, practice mindfulness, but Islam is mindfulness. The Quran is mindfulness. The way in which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, carried himself is mindfulness. Is spirituality. Take some time. Ramadan is gone, but take some time with yourself, for yourself, away from everything, and just say, this is what I've been going through, and there's no one else you're going to turn to. You can talk to your parents, you can talk to a therapist, you can do this, you can talk to that, and they might help you in the best way that they can. But no one can alleviate and no one can take you away from this stress of yours than your Lord. So turn back to Him. Cut all the middleman, as they say. Cut all of that, and just you and your Lord. And that's one of the blessings of this religion of Islam that we have, because in Christianity, in some denominations, they have to go through like the father or the priest, a confession box or something like that, as if God needs a middleman to get to Him.
They claim that you're not pure enough to speak to God. We're not pure. That's why we need to speak to God
straight away, directly. So cut out all the middleman and just go straight to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and just say, this is what I've been going through. How oh Allah, make it easy for me. Make dua for yourself, make dua for your family, and watch how your life will change. Whether it's just 3 minutes, 2 minutes. I mean, if the West, them without considering that there is a God, without considering the spirituality of it, are emphasizing you taking 5 minutes, you using these mental health apps, you using this, you using that. We should definitely be on it. And as I mentioned, Islam has been telling us to do this beforehand, but I feel like we only understood it. The West have now said, we should do it.
Now
this Islam thing.
We need the scientists and the psychologists to validate our Islam. That's how. But we don't realize that they're the ones that are playing catch up with us. Right? We have the truth, and we have all the things that we need, and like they're realizing now as well that there is a soul, and this soul needs to be fed,
to be nourished,
to be protected, and to be nourished exactly. And what they're trying to do is apply it, kind of tackle the problem from a psychological or scientific or methodical process, but they don't realize that there's more than just a physical body and a brain and a consciousness. There's an actual soul, and of course, if you want to take care of your soul, then you should refer to the guidance that was sent by the creator of that soul.
Literally that, and there were specific guidelines and specific examples that said, this is how you nourish your soul. So it's like me saying, I want to drive a car, and you look at every other manual that is to drive a car and say, I can't find any manuals to drive a car. There is one right there in front of you. So pick it up and read it. So, I think this is I know we're digressing a bit, but I think it's a very important topic, perhaps something that we'll have to look into in the future. There is, Islam has always said, spirituality, keep yourself in solitude, consider, ponder, do you not think, do you not consider? And yet we're now waiting for the West to say, okay, the Quran says that, but I need my scientists to confirm it for me. And then this Islam thing, maybe it had a good point anyways. Because you're quite right, they are playing catch up to us. They probably, I don't want to say anything, but maybe they're stealing our ideas. Maybe they're the ones going through the Quran and going,
they might be.
This isn't a bad idea. You know what, let's just now put it in an academic journal, publish it, now it's like the verified on, I don't know, social media platform. Now it's verified. Before, alhamdulillah. But no, we've got what we need to have. We've got it now. Let us hold on to it. So, it's important that we try to maintain these good habits after Ramadan. And the best way to do that is, try to do things consistently and try to remain in the mosque and these sorts of activities that we've mentioned. That's it for us today, and we will join us next week,
Stay
inshallah.
tuned.